What is good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode brought to you by the League FFB. Today, we're going to be talking about Week 13 must-start, must-sit wide receivers. So without wasting any more time, let's hop right into this video and let's talk about the guys that I like first. Now, the first player that I like this week is going to be Jaylen Waddle for the Miami Dolphins, and he is currently a top 10 wide receiver in my rankings this week. He's playing on the road at the Washington Commanders, and I would view Jaylen Waddle as a mid-range wide receiver one in your fantasy football lineups this week. Washington is currently the 31st ranked defense against fantasy football wide receivers, allowing 35.5 fantasy points per game to the position. And last week, Jaylen Waddle went 8 receptions for 114 yards. Good for the wide receiver 15 on the week, and in that matchup, Tyreek Hill got a little bit banged up. He's still banged up. He was a limited participant in practice here on Thursday at the time of this recording. And so I think that there's a good chance that Tyreek Hill is going to play in this game, but there is also a good chance that they are going to be leaning on Jaylen Waddle a little bit more in this matchup. Now, the second wide receiver that I am going to be starting in my fantasy football leagues this week is going to be Puka Nacua of the Los Angeles Rams. He gets to play against the Cleveland Browns at home. I currently have him as a top 15 wide receiver in my rankings this week, and I'm viewing him as a high-end wide receiver 2 for your fantasy football leagues. Now, the story of Puka Nacua has been really hot and cold ever since Cooper Kupp returned to the lineup in week 5. In those 7 games that Puka has played with Cooper Kupp, he has 3 finishes as a top 12 wide receiver and 4 finishes where he didn't even crack the top 50. Now, Kupp got a little bit banged up in last week's game. He was a full participant at practice today, again at the time of this recording, so we are going to be expecting Cooper Kupp to play in this matchup. But since Kupp joined the lineup, he really hasn't been his true self. I do think that they lean a little bit more on Puka Nacua in this matchup against a Browns defense that is also banged up here this week. And now the third wide receiver that I think you guys should be playing in your lineups this week is going to be Diontae Johnson of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he gets to play at home against the Arizona Cardinals. I currently have him as a top 24 wide receiver in my rankings this week, and that's going to make him a low-end wide receiver 2 for your fantasy football lineups. And there has been a lot of talk of Diontae Johnson as of lately, walking on a fumble last week, so the media has definitely been bashing Diontae over the last week or so, but I really do think that we should be tuning all of that out. I don't really think that that matters too much for what we're talking about for fantasy football. And with that being said, the Arizona Cardinals are ranked 18th against the wide receiver position, allowing 28.7 fantasy points per game to that position group. And the Pittsburgh Steelers offense has looked a little bit better without Matt Canada. Obviously, they still didn't score the football as much, but they did have a 400-yard game. This is something that was never done in the Matt Canada era. So it did get a little bit better for the Pittsburgh Steelers last week without that OC. And the thing about Diontae Johnson is he still has a safe floor. He's got 20 targets over his last 3 games where he hasn't been a very viable fantasy football option, but he's still receiving the target volume. But now that we've talked about the 3 guys that I like, let's talk about 3 riskier options and possibly guys that you could be avoiding in your fantasy football lineups. And we're going to be starting with Chris Godwin, wide receiver for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He gets to play at home against the Carolina Panthers, and I currently have him outside of my top 30 wide receivers on the week. And I'm viewing Chris Godwin as a mid-range wide receiver 3 for your fantasy football leagues. Now, this matchup for Chris Godwin isn't the best matchup. The Carolina Panthers currently are ranked 4th against fantasy football wide receivers, only allowing 22.7 fantasy points per game to the position. And Chris Godwin has really taken a backseat behind Mike Evans, so I don't think that there's going to be plenty of fantasy football points to go around here in this matchup. And when we look back at the last 2 months of football, or Chris Godwin's last 8 games, he only has 1 finish in those 8 games as a wide receiver 2 or better. Everything else has been outside of the top 24 wide receivers. So Chris Godwin is somebody that I will be avoiding this week. Now, the second wide receiver that I think is risky this week is going to be Drake London, wide receiver for the Atlanta Falcons, and he gets to play on the road at the New York Jets. He's currently ranked outside of my top 36 wide receivers on the week, and that means I am viewing Drake London as a flex wide receiver this week and nothing more. The New York Jets are currently the toughest matchup in football for fantasy football wide receivers, ranked number 1 overall, only allowing 19.5 fantasy points per game to the position. And this Atlanta Falcons offense has looked really bad with Desmond Ridder at the quarterback. It does look like Desmond Ridder is going to be the quarterback again in this matchup here against the Jets. And I think in a matchup where Drake London is likely going to be seeing a ton of Sauce Gardner, he really is just going to be a touchdown dependent option, and he really hasn't scored a lot of touchdowns this year. Only 2 receiving touchdowns on the season up to this point. And now the third and final wide receiver that I think is risky this week is going to be Green Bay Packers wide receiver Christian Watson, and I currently have him outside of my top 36 wide receivers. He does get to play the Kansas City Chiefs here at home in this matchup. And just like Drake London, I'm only viewing Christian Watson as a flex wide receiver this week. And I know Christian Watson has really been starting to heat up over the last couple weeks. He has back-to-back weeks with a touchdown now, overall. Last week, he was a top 15 play at the wide receiver position, but the Kansas City Chiefs are a fairly tough matchup against wide receivers. They're currently ranked 8th overall against the position, only allowing 24.3 points per game to that positional group. Additionally, this is an offense that does kind of spread the football around. Seems like over the last couple weeks, they've been getting Jaden Reed more involved. Obviously, Romeo Doubs is still going to get the football, and Christian Watson is going to get the football too, but it's tough to track who is going to be the real target leader from any given week. And just like with Drake London, I think unless Christian Watson catches a touchdown here in this matchup, he's going to finish outside of your top 36 wide receivers. Now, that is all I have for you guys today. If you did enjoy the video, go ahead and hit that like button. It is the best free way to show our channel some support. It lets me know that you guys enjoy the content still, and it also helps us out in the YouTube algorithm. Also, if you're not subscribed to this channel and you want to catch more videos like this in the future, make sure you hit that subscribe button and make sure you hit the notification bell. That way you don't miss any new videos when they do come out. And last but not least, if you want to join our Discord, I do have a free Discord linked in the description. We have a ton of people that like to talk fantasy football all day long, 24/7, 365. And like I said, it's free, so there's no risk in joining that. And with all of that out of the way, I don't have anything else for you today, so I will see you on our next video. But until then, peace out.